In this video, I'm going to talk about centering, cover a couple of different methods and some of the things that can go wrong. So you're going to want to start with dry hands, dry clay, and a dry wheelhead, and then throw that piece of clay right down in the center. Then we'll move on to slap centering, so just slapping and manually spinning the wheel as you go, trying to work the clay into a fairly symmetrical lump. Putting in some work here so that it is quite even is going to really help you in the next stage. So then you can wet the clay and wet your hands. You want to make sure the clay is always running smooth underneath your hands. If it runs out of water and starts to get sticky, don't ever fight through that stickiness, but just grab a little bit more water and work it through your hands. So now you'll be sitting with your arms braced on your legs at about 90 degrees to each other, and with the line of your arm pointing right in towards the very center of the clay. You'll have your left hand pushing in towards the center and your right hand squeezing, cupping between the fingers and the back of the hand there, working up towards the cone. So your right fingertips are on the clay and your left fingertips are over the top of those. To deal with this clay skirt down the bottom, you can angle your fingertips down and really hook them in and pull them in towards yourself. Try to deal with that flare down the bottom of the cone before you continue working up. So now coming down the cone, we're using this karate chop. It's almost like a folded over karate chop with that right hand really solidly braced against the left. And as I come down, it's pushing forward and down, and the left hand is pushing in towards the clay as well. So just coming back up into the cone, we do this a few times, usually 2 or 3 times, and then continue as needed. So you can see those right fingertips squeezing in, left hand pushing in towards the center, both working up towards the cone. The thumbs point up towards the top the whole time. You can also use the sponge, as I'm doing here, to pull in that very bottom corner to avoid getting a big wide skirt there. That's really important to make sure that that clay is centered all the way down to the wheelhead. So coming back up to the cone, closing over the top, using the blade of our hand to come down, and you see I push forward and down, the cone bends a little bit. My hands are really solidly connected together. Left hand continues to push forward into the center of the cone, and the right hand is pushing forward and down. Those fingertips hold in the edge a little bit, just at the very end here, to fully set the centered lump of clay. So fingertips gripping in up the top there. You can see how the left hand is supporting the right hand, the fingertips on the right hand, squeezing in, moving up towards the cone, closing over the top, and continuing to come up, thumbs pointing up towards the center, closing, holding it for a moment right there. All right, so here's another method to come down. You can see I've got my right hands cupped around the clay this time, and my left thumb is doing the work of pushing the clay forward and down. So I'll come back up again and show you that one more time. So squeezing in, you see the clay rising just from the pressure. I don't necessarily have to grip it and lift it up. Just by squeezing it, it can come up underneath my hands. So you can see the left thumb, or rather the big muscle underneath the left thumb, is pushing forward and down in towards the center of the cone, and the right hand is supporting it the whole way down, closing my fingers around the base to lock that circle in. All right, I'll show you a top view now. It might help to illustrate some of these things that I've been talking about. So you can see where my left hand is pushing into the clay. You see the slip accumulating underneath where that pressure is. Now you've got my right fingertips gripping into the clay, left fingers over the top of them, and the back of my left hand pushing in towards the center, working up to the top, closing over there. All right, and coming down with that blade of my right hand. The left hand moves over to expose the very center of the cone there, and you want the back of your right hand lined up with the very center. Coming down, pushing forward and down, with my right hand angled back a little bit towards myself so that as it comes down, it's creating a cone shape, not a flat top. All right, continuing down, letting the clay expand underneath my fingers and then holding it in with the fingertips right at the bottom there. This is a bit of a longer video, but centering really is the foundation of everything we do, so it's good to spend a bit of time here. Now I'll show you a couple of things to look out for. So one of those is getting a crater or a dip up the top. It's quite common for this to happen, so it's good to know what to look out for. If it does happen, you want to get on it quickly. So to take it away, you just lean on the corner of the cone or the edge of the volcano that you've created. So pushing down on that edge, you should be able to round it back out and bring the edges down while the inside has a chance to come up. So one of the causes of this is pulling the hands up the cone, but not closing over the top of the cone. So if you keep your hands open, it allows that dip to form. If you bring your hands together and close over the top as you work, you should be able to prevent that from happening. So use the back of your left thumb, point it in towards the center, and close your hands over that cone. Now I'll show you another method of bringing the cone down. So for this method, you've got the big muscle underneath your left thumb lined up with the center of the cone, and your right thumb over the top of that thumb, pushing it down. So your right fingertips are cupped around the clay, and your left fingertips are over the top of them. So your hands are fully connected together. You're getting strength from both of those hands, strength and stability by those hands being locked and connected. You can see here how my left fingertips are supporting my right fingertips to hold in the outside of the circle here so that we finish with a perfectly symmetrical base. So I'm going to come back up. Now again, those right fingertips squeezing in, supported by the left, closing in towards the center the whole way and working up towards the tip of the cone. I'll just finish that movement now, so watch the way my hands close together, come off the top, and then I'll bring it back down. Right fingertips curled around the cone, the back of my left thumb, that big muscle down there pushing forward and down, always in line with that central point, and hands always connected, working together. Now I'll show you what happens if you move away from the central point. So if the thumb slides off to the side, those fingertips can pinch together, and you might even end up taking some clay off the top of your lump. So equally, if it slides off the other way, the same thing can happen. You create a little lump up the top, and then that thumb or finger slides underneath it and can break it right off. So hopefully by now you understand the importance of bracing your arms, connecting your hands as you work, keeping that stability and strength, and always working towards the center of the clay. There are lots of variations on these methods, but we're all working with the same fundamental principles. Learning to center well is challenging, but if you put in the work, you will get there.